On Tuesday, my office filed a criminal complaint against defendant Buck for an incident on September 11th in which he injected the victim with a large dose of methamphetamine. Fortunately, that victim lived. The latest incident is further evidence that shows a troubling and disturbing pattern, especially given that defendant Buck was aware of the dangers of his behavior and that there was an ongoing investigation into the deaths of Mr. Moore and Mr. Dean. The surviving victims' statements gave us the break we needed. It gave legally sufficient evidence to establish the charged crimes and prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt in state court. Given this new evidence, my office worked diligently with law enforcement and my prosecutors and filed 3 felony charges on Tuesday against defendant Buck. They were battery causing serious injury, administering methamphetamine, and maintaining a drug house.
As you have reported earlier this week, Ed Buck, a man known in political circles for his support of various causes in Los Angeles, was arrested Tuesday on state charges alleging that he operated a drug den, among other charges. Today I am announcing a federal case against Mr. Buck, a case that charges him with distributing methamphetamine that directly resulted in the overdose death of Jamel Moore, a 26-year-old man who died in Mr. Buck's West Hollywood apartment on July 27, 2017. As a result of the case filed last night in the United States District Court, District Attorney Jackie Lacey agreed that Mr. Buck should be transferred to federal custody to face charges that carry a mandatory minimum sentence of 20 years in federal prison and a maximum of life in prison without parole. The evidence collected by members of the federal task force, which also includes the FBI, indicates that Mr. Buck brought Mr. Moore to Los Angeles for the purpose of engaging in sexual activity, and that Mr. Buck agreed to pay the victim with money and narcotics. During the investigation, Mr. Moore's mother told investigators that her son reported, months before his death, that Mr. Buck had, quote, held Mr. Moore against his will and shot him up with drugs, unquote. Investigators with the Sheriff's Department several months ago located a homeless man in a West Hollywood park who said he had heard about Mr. Buck from other men who referred to Mr. Buck as Dr. Kevorkian because he was, quote, well known for compensating male prostitutes with drug and money, unquote.